Hi, it's Dawn from Dawn's Dirt can mean gardening, dirt can mean beef, dirt can mean vegetables, dirt can mean farm to table sales, dirt can mean politics, dirt can mean religion, dirt can mean anything I want it to mean because it's my show. So thanks so much for tuning in today. I've got Brittany from Faithful Farming, and she's here with me today, and we're going to chat about her farm and her faith. And she's also got a husband as well. So welcome to the show today. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Nice to meet you, Dawn. We are Faithful Farming. We're Long Family Farms here in southern Missouri, down in the States. And we have about 700 acres here, and we run registered Black Angus cattle, and we have two boys. So we're pretty busy down here.
Wow. And you're currently at work, I've heard. And so
Yeah.
you work to offset your farming habits. That's the way it goes for lots and lots of farmers. So I think lots and lots of listeners can identify with that, where they have an off-farm job to support their farming habit. And so, yeah, tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about your farm and about, how you do it.
Sure. So Jake and I, we both work full-time careers. We've always been very involved in our professional careers as well. And yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't know too many people in the cattle industry anymore that can make it just running cattle. It's not the same business it used to be, and so we both work full-time. I have a degree in communications and a master's degree in healthcare administration, and work for a tech company. My husband has his doctorate in educational administration, and he's superintendent of a school district. So we both have pretty busy jobs, and balancing our professional careers and our farm. It takes a balancing act most days. And then on top of it, the most important work, raising two boys. So
For sure. Wow. So you're a mama and you're a farmer and you've got a career and you've got it
Mhm.
all. So how do you do that? How do you balance it all? Like how do you, cuz I know farms take a lot of work and like children take a lot of work. I've had three daughters myself, like how do you do this all? Like how do you look so great today and not look like a frazzled mess? Like
Well, thank you. It just works out. It always works out. And it's taken me a while to get here. I'm about to turn 42 next week, actually. And so um, I've spent a lot of my life stressing out how to make it all work, right? But I think at the end of the day, it always works out. And um, everything kind of just has its part. We work our jobs, and we spend time together on the farm. And obviously, our boys are very involved in the farm, and that's family time and farm time, right? And it's also great lessons for them on work ethic. Because if you raise three girls farming as well, you get it. I mean, there's no better way to raise your kids than on a farm. And so, and I mean, a huge part of it, I don't do it all, right? Like, there's never one day that I'm just like killing it on every aspect. And I think, the perception of being able to do it all is alive because, well, A, we're all doing it all the time, and it's all, part of it. But Jake's an incredible husband and dad. And I mean, I know there's a lot of men that aren't, but he is, and we hit the dad jackpot when we got him. And so that makes a huge difference. We have a family farm. So my in-laws live about 400 yards from us. So they are critical in making everything work for us. My mom's close by too, and she tells me all the time, like, you're so lucky you have such a big support system. You can do a lot more than most people can. So it's nice having family around.
I love it. So you've got a team, and that's the thing. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to have a farm. And so that's what
Sure.
you're doing. You've got you and your husband, and then you've got the village around you, helping with all the different components. And so how does
Yeah.
that look? How does your village support you? And then I'm also curious about a bad day. Tell me about let's go to the negative. Never mind the
Yeah.
positive. Let's go to the negative. I don't know why I'm going to the negative. Normally I like to go to the positive, but yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. So, our support system wise, man, we're just so lucky. Jake's parents are right here. They're super involved with the boys. I mean, Papa is our kid's favorite person in this whole world, and they both it's double-sided, they both wanna hang out with each other all the time, and it's so much fun. In fact, Wednesdays are Papa Day, and, our youngest is only in preschool, so he gets to still skip school, and our oldest did until he started kindergarten, but it's Wednesday's always been Papa Day. They've always gotta spend it with Papa, fishing, shooting turtles or whatever, just all the fun little farm stuff that they get to do. But yeah, a bad day looks like really stress and you're juggling because juggling everything is really stressful. And then, of course, you probably can relate. I think us moms are really good at the mom guilt thing and feeling like, "Ah, I didn't spend enough time doing this today. We didn't read enough books tonight. I didn't make a healthy enough dinner today." And just like really laying in bed at night, beating yourself up about all the things you didn't do. It's really easy, being a professional, having a career to put a lot of emphasis and focus on that some days, because it can be really stressful and all consuming. And at the end of the day, you got to keep focus on what matters. And, that's our faith for us and our relationship with Jesus and raising our kids. And so trying to keep our focus on that at the end of the day is what matters. But some days it doesn't look like that. And some days, I'm misstepping and it's hard and I'm stressed and anxious and all of those things that come with it. So,
Thank you for sharing that because that's reality. Sometimes we see on the Instagram and everything looks so perfect.
yeah.
And I guess this is maybe the reason why we're going here is because everything looks so perfect sometimes on these Instagram pages and these homestead pages and these farm pages and
Yes.
reality is sometimes it's not perfect. I used to say when I had my farm, I sacrificed meals at my table to put food on other people's tables
Yeah.
and that was just it. Like we some I grow corn, and the only time I ate the corn was when I shucked it in my booth at a farmer's market and ate it raw. Like that was my corn experience for that season. And then I also had it too with my daughters, just going back to, kids on the farm. I sold my farm here a year and a half ago, and I took my first job in 20 years. And people said, "Oh, now you've got more time for your daughters, more time for your children." And I said, actually, no, I can't take my kids to work. When I've
Yeah.
had the farm, they came with me to farmers markets. And, yes, we fought. And yes, all the things that families and regular, normal families do. But my girls worked with me and they were with me and they drove to the farmers market with me. And we were in the vehicle together and spending time together, talking. And I actually spent more time with my children when I was working 80 hours a week on my farm than working, 40 hours a week at a job.
Sure.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah. So talk about your faith. I love this. The Lord owned my farm and the Lord now owns my current business. So
Oh, I love
tell us
that.
about your faith and farming because that's where you're about. That's what you're about right now. Are you sitting on a farm or homestead that could be making you real money? Tired of guessing on how to market your products? I owned a 36,000 square foot greenhouse. I ran 2 farm to table stores. I had 30 people on payroll. I brought in $2.5 million in gross revenue in 2020, selling farm goods directly to customers. Now I teach farmers and homesteaders how to make money and save money off the land they already have. Whether you're selling eggs, beef, produce, baked goods, or anything in between, if you want to get into direct marketing and grow your sales, I'm the girl for you. Stop leaving money on the table and start putting it into your bank account. Join me at Dawn's Dirt Business Coaching and let's make your farm pay you back.
Yeah. So, I mean, our faith is at the center of everything we do. We try to, wake up every morning and make sure we're spending time in the word and focusing all of our gifts. In fact, this morning I did a Bible study on, I tell you, this is one of my favorite chat GPT hacks is every morning I type into chat GPT and I say, I'm struggling with this or I'm struggling with this. Help me to find the verses and put together, a 30-minute devotional for me this morning that I can do by myself. And so I do that every morning. And I have found I know like there's a lot of bad things with social media and the internet and chat GPT, but that's been a really cool tool for me to use. And so this morning I put in, help me to realize my gifts and how I can serve. And so trying to kind of focus on what am I being called to do right now and keeping that at the center of what I'm doing because some days it feels really blurry, right? You are wearing a lot of different hats. And I'm like, am I wearing any of these hats? Do I look good in any of them? Or do I need to take some off and find a new one and figure out like what my gifts are, where I serve God best and what that looks like. Our faith has, held us together through some really hard times. I think there's times we've been married for 16 and a half years. We've known each other since fifth grade. We've been best friends since then. So we've had a long history. And anybody that's had a long history, you've gone through hard times, you've loved each other, you've hated each other, you've had to work to keep it together. And Jake is just a great example of a godly man, and played a huge part in my own faith. And I think being able to keep Christ the center of our marriage and our family, that's what it's all about. And that's what we try every day to be able to do, and to use the gifts that, we've been given, and understand that my gifts are different than your gifts. But ultimately, at the end of the day, everyone's gifts needs to be used in service to God. And that's what we're trying to do. So
Sure, that's amazing. Earlier when you were talking about Papa, that's where it came from. It's generational. Papa taught
for
your
sure.
husband, who's now
Yeah.
teaching your boys, who will be great husbands one day. And I feel like society, I'm just gonna be mouthy. I think society needs more of that in it.
Same.
Good men to stand up and be masculine and teach the young men and lead the young men to be young men. And that's amazing. Now let's relate farming or faith back to the farm. So like I said, when I had my farm, the Lord owned it. And so when I'd go into problems or get into rough times, and I've had a bumpy road with my faith, and I'm divorced and, a bunch of things like that. I love Jesus, but sometimes I swear. But so it's been bumpy, but the Lord has owned it. And so I've always found that when I ran into bumps in the road, the best business advice I was ever given was, what does the owner say? Because he's the owner. And so
Hmm.
I would talk to the owner especially when it was hard. Sometimes sometimes you forget to pray when it's easy, but you for sure pray when it's hard. And
Yeah.
so I would talk to the owner. So let's relate your faith back to your farm, because this is a farming show. So how
Yeah.
does your faith impact your farm?
You know, well, your faith impacts everything, right? And I think being able to pray in those moments like you're talking about, and I got to tell you, Don, I'm kind of opposite. A lot of people say, like, it's easy to pray when things are good, but it's not. Or it's you easily forget to pray when things are good, right? I'm kind of opposite. When I get down in the trenches, I am like, I don't know, like it's like I get a mental block sometimes, and or you need to be doing something you're not, and so you kind of are like Jonah, right? And you're avoiding going to prayer and going to your father and asking for advice because you're so headstrong on wanting something to work out. And I think that's a way it comes into the farm too. Like, you want to expand your herd, or you want to buy more land, but the father's saying right now is not the time for that. And so you kind of get a little headstrong, and eventually you get swallowed by a whale and thrown out where God wants you to. And sometimes you learn that the hard way. But I think being able to sit down in prayer, good times, bad times, all of it is, a practice we all need to be in. And whether you're praying over your cattle or your land, or if you're a crop farmer, whatever it is, I think knowing and understanding that God's will, not ours, is what's the most important thing. And if he wants us to expand our farm or grow our farm, or our boys to continue our farm, we have to be okay with that and know that it's part of his plan. So that really plays into a lot of the decisions we make. We're really passionate, and we feel very strongly, as I think a lot of generational farmers do. And we want our kids to take this over someday. And that's a huge part of why we do what we do. And it's a huge part of why we work 40, 50-hour weeks at our actual jobs to turn around and work 100 hours at the farm. We're working a lot, especially right now in the season. And some days you have to sit down. I told Jake this yesterday. I had a rough day, at my office job, and I went out at lunch, and I do this a lot during my lunch hour, and walk down, get the mail, and just pray about it, right? And you come back in and everything seems a little better. And yesterday I was praying about, some farm stuff, and are we doing the right thing? We're getting ready to make a pretty big purchase on some additional land, which is always a little scary, right? Especially with the cattle industry. I don't know how it is in Canada right now. I'm sure it's similar, but it's insane, right? And so we're trying to make decisions right now, like, okay, we're going to buy this land, and then do we want to put heifers on it? Do we want to put, cows that are ready to calve on it? Like, what's our plan and what's our long-term strategy. And I think being able to turn to God in prayer in some of those moments is really critical.
For sure. Letting him lead you. Let the owner lead you.
Mhm. Yeah,
For
exactly.
sure. Okay, so can you tell us about a little bit about? So I know things in Canada, and I've heard bits and pieces about things in the States. What's going on with cattle in the States? Can you? Well, we talked about faith. We may as well bring it into some politics now
Sure.
too, because
Yeah.
yeah. So what's going on with cows in the States, and where's your food system at down there?
Yeah, so, so our operations here personally, we run a cow-calf operation. We don't feed out to butcher. So it's just a really interesting time here. So cattle prices are at an all-time historic high. And people are selling calves and cows and heifers and steers, all of them that they've never sold. People are selling off heifers, which we've never sold heifers before. We always try to keep our heifer crop, and we're sitting here thinking, do we need to sell these heifers? I mean, it's an interesting time. It's also a little scary because what goes up must come down, right? And it feels like this isn't sustainable almost. So I'm not an expert like I probably should be, but I just don't see how we can sustain this. Beef prices are high. I also think there's a really interesting shift here in the States that we're starting to see. And I don't know if like the media's brought a little more attention to it than before, but it seems like people are really questioning where their food are coming from more than ever before, especially their beef. There's been a lot of issues this last year with not allowing Mexico to ship in cattle. And I don't know if you heard this, but now Australia is open and the US can ship beef to Australia now. We haven't been able to do that in a very long time. I mean, so the market's just changing even from, country to country, and it's just so interesting. But the beef side of it is also, the beef producers are obviously feeling this as well. And, definitely something we've never done before is produce our own beef. But, we're even thinking, is that something we need to think about? Obviously we butcher for ourselves, we butcher for friends and family, but we don't sell it or anything. But when things are going on like this, you're like, maybe we need to, because people are really wanting that. They want to know where their food comes from more so than ever before, which I think is great. And I think that there should be transparency about where our food comes from. And I want to know that my kids are actually eating beef when it says beef on a package, right? So I get it why other people want to know that.
For sure. I love that. I actually just recorded another podcast here a couple of minutes ago, and it was an app that she's got rolled out in Canada, and she eventually it'll be in the States, but it's exactly to do that. It's to strengthen our local communities to be eating directly from farmers. So we were talking in that episode
Nice.
about the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, and
Hmm.
getting back to that system where your farmer, your vegetable producer. And that's how I ran my farm. Actually, I shook the hands of my customers and clients. They knew exactly who I was, who I knew who they were. I had fed their children, and it was real community minded. And I really strongly feel that if we can get back to that system, I think that will feed the world globally. So yes, yes, the States can ship to Australia, but what happens? Like, that's my question always, is what happens to that beef or what happens to that vegetable between the farm? The farmers are never the problem. I don't think the farmers are the problem. What happens to that item, that food item, between the farm and the grocery store shelves? Like, how does that all work? And just questioning the system. I'm all about questioning, and so yeah, I'm all for getting into direct marketing. If you need some help, that's what Don's Dirt does, actually.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like just strengthening our communities. I think that's a great idea. Now, I heard you say what goes up must come down. Talk to me about that. Like, what do you think if you had to shake the magic wand? The Lord knows, but if you had to shake the magic wand and predict, where do you think beef is going?
Don't know. I hate to make these statements like this because we have obviously a personal vested interest. We have friends with vested interests, and I think the beef market starts going back down, and people get hurt, and livelihoods are gone. But I think a lot of people are making a lot of money right now, and it's out of balance. And I think anytime something's this out of balance, it's not healthy for the overall being of the industry, right? I think, yeah, cattle prices are really high and it's a good time to sell right now. But what about those younger farmers that are trying to get started right now? And, like I mentioned, I'm almost 42, so I'm starting to enter this phase of life, where you're thinking about the next generation and I'm thinking about my kids and, of course I want to see them have a farm here, which um but there's not a lot of small farms being started anymore. It doesn't seem like. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of younger people wanting to get into the industry because it's too expensive. And people don't want to do like what Jake and I are doing. They don't want to like work full time and then try to start a farm. And I get that, right? Like they're trying to start a career, they're trying to raise a family, and it's a lot. And unless you are someone like us that has generational land and, a head start and a family that's been in it, it's really, really hard industry to get into right now. As beautiful as Instagram makes it look and the homesteaders are doing, that's not it. And it's not easy. And you can't just run out to the country and buy a few acres and a few cows and it's cute and pretty and you're making money. Like that's just not the reality of it. Um, and it's worrisome, right? Because back to the conversation of our food supply, where's our food going to come from if we don't have any young farmers who want to come up and start raising cattle?
For sure, absolutely. And I've been saying for a long time because I used to sell into the big system. So I had a
Mhm.
36,000 square foot greenhouse. So I'm just likening beef to vegetables, but it's all food.
Oh, the
And I
same.
used to sell to the big grocery system. I used to sell to the warehouse, and eventually I got pushed out because I couldn't afford to anymore, and I didn't have the bureaucratic paperwork to support that. And then I pulled out of the grocery system, and then I was just doing direct to consumer. But I've been saying for a long time, he who controls the food controls the people. And that's why I'm all for the local food system going back down. Now, do you know who Joel Salatin is?
I don't.
No, so Joel Salatin, he's a very hippie, he's organic and, like, love him or hate him, like, he's got some really different ideas about food, and he does a lot of direct marketing, and I've met the man, he is brilliant, and even if you don't, like, agree with everything he does, that doesn't matter. He's a brilliant, sales guy, he's a brilliant at connecting people to their food and doing the direct marketing route, and, I just think he's very creative and out of the box. So when I think of farms, yes, you were talking about generational. You're able to hopefully pass it down to your boys. They're able to pass it down to their children. That is a great head start. But young people getting into it, I think we just need to shift the way we think sometimes. And instead of seeing the big system, like the warehouse, like the grocery system, being creative and thinking outside the box and shifting it
Mhm.
smaller and shifting it to your local community. So I'll use a dozen cucumbers. So when I sold to the warehouse, it was $7 for 1 dozen cucumbers to the warehouse. It was $12 to the grocery store, and it was $24 to consumer. So for your beef, it would be the same thing. It'd be $7. Well, we'll tack a zero on there. It'd be $700 to the warehouse, 7,000 to the, and then 70,000, maybe not that high for a beef cow, but you just make more money. And so it's thinking outside the box and being creative. What's your thoughts on that? Because you've probably seen some of that. And have you really thought much about that?
Yeah, I think I love what you're saying. I listened to another podcast a while back, talking about social media in the beef industry right now. And um similar concept. I mean, different point, but similar concept is these younger guys are going to have to think outside of the box because the way my father and grandfather and great grandfather did it might have worked for their generation, but it doesn't work now, and they had to also think outside of the box. And we don't always realize that, right? Like we're like, that's how they did it in 1700, but somebody in 1600 probably did it differently. And then they had to shift their thinking. And that's what progress is. And that's like what our country is built on. And I think we all absolutely have to be thinking outside of the box and whatever that looks like. And we have to adjust and grow with the times, So absolutely think that's critical.
Yeah, for sure. Amazing. So yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Can you walk us through a day-to-day on your farm and how you navigate it? That's a great question. How do you
Yeah.
navigate your day-to-day? So you're at a job, you've got your boys, you've got the farm. What does a day look like for you? Because for me, sitting in this seat, I'm hearing like, man, I just worked from like 3 in the morning till 2 in the morning and I get an hour's worth of sleep. So how do you navigate all this?
Well, we're really lucky. We do have a considerable amount of land. So we're able to graze a lot. Jake's up at 4:30 every morning. So, I take one for the team. I stay and sleep in with the boys, right? Rough for me. Jake gets up at 4:30 and he does all the morning chores that need to be done. And then they usually head out for work and school at 6:30. So we have early starts. We all start work, farm work and our regular jobs very early compared to a lot of people. And then they're home at 4:30. So they get home. We usually eat dinner about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then we go out and we do chores until dark. And it's enjoyable. Like I know it some people consider it work, and it is work, I guess, but we love it and it doesn't feel like work. We're with our boys and we take the feed truck and the tractor or put out hay or whatever we need to do, and we're all together and we have, you know, I don't know about you, but if when your kids were little, but if we're just sitting around the house, like they're going to cause chaos, they're going to be jumping on everything. So if we're out doing chores, like they have an activity, they're moving their bodies, they're outside in the air. And I think that's so important, especially for these feral children we're raising. And they have a job, right? And they feel such a little responsibility for their chores. And our 6-year old runs the skid steer and puts hay out. I mean, like these kids are capable and able to do stuff that most people don't even wouldn't even let their kid try to do, and we try to challenge them and we try to let them see that they can do hard things. And they actually really contribute around here. So they're a huge help. They're still little, but they're a really big help. And we just have a lot of fun every evening, doing our chores and making sure the cattle are taken care of. So that's pretty much a typical day for us. I'm a pretty routine person. I like schedule. I like routine. So we don't veer from that very often, honestly.
For sure. I love that. I love that you've got your family out there doing the chores. I love that the 6-year-old is running the skid steer and working. I mean,
Yeah.
that's some child labor there, but that's so important. That will
Right.
carry on through his lifetime. That will be a skill set, and he'll be the next generation getting up at 4:30 for his family one day. And I
Yeah.
think that's what we're missing in society right now is we're missing that work ethic piece.
Oh,
I
for
I can
sure.
remember I had to work on my family farm. We had a greenhouse and we were told to work. If you don't work, you don't eat. And I've raised my daughters that way as well. They have jobs now and they work. And my little one, so she's not that little, she's 14, but she just took it upon herself to milk my goat last night. I just got a goat this year, so she's not done it before and she's kind of shown no interest in it. But last night she wanted me to take her someplace and I said, that's fine, but I have to record this podcast and then I have to milk the goat and then we can go. And she's like, Mom, I'll go milk the goat because she wanted to go. So there was some incentive there and she just did it. And I think that's really important. And it's such a confidence booster for them. And I went to her last
Yes.
night and I said, I'm so proud of you that you just milked the goat. You've never done it before. You kind of saw me do it once or twice, but they're teenage girls, right? We've
Yeah.
got a little difference here, but she just did it. And so to hear that your 6-year-old's in a skid steer feeding the animals, that you're doing it as a family, what a great way for those boys to grow up. Like that's
Sure.
amazing. So what would you say? It's a little controversial having children operate machinery and operate trucks and things like that. Sometimes I see on the internet they've got people, the farmers are filming their 6-year-olds, in the big tractors and things like that. What would you say to that? Because I grew up like that. I've been driving since I was very young. So what would you say to that?
If you ever look at our Instagram, it's like our kids running machinery all over the place. So, teach them safe, teach them right. I mean, I tell you what, we have friends and cousins and stuff like that have kids that they like can't walk down a rock path because their parents are like so scared they're going to get hurt. Right. And I love the phrase, like, teach them to do like dangerous things safely, and I think that's critical. And I am cautious saying this because it is so controversial, but we've taught our boys from a very early age that like if you're big enough to do something, you've got to be responsible and you have to be careful, but you can still do it. And it's not only teaching them responsibility and to operate and to actually work and contribute, but it's also teaching them a level of cautiousness that I think, has to come in life. Now, I will say they're very different kids, right? Like our oldest has been driving four-wheelers and gators and stuff like that since he was 3. I mean, and even at 3, he was cautious, he was focused, and he was careful. Our younger one is like feral and like he jumps on a four-wheeler and he's like doing donuts, and we have to be like, okay, you're done. Like you lost your privileges, right? But no, I think it's a great learning experience for them. I think it teaches them, like you said, to have confidence. Like they know we trust them to do it, and we know that they're going to be responsible and not make bad decisions. Hopefully, I'm not saying that I'm not going to message you tomorrow and say my 6-year-old broke his arm on a skid steer. That could happen, right? Like, and I think that's a risk, but he could also ride his bike and break his arm. So I don't know. I'm all for letting kids try to learn how to do things carefully and be brave and learn they can do hard things. So
For sure. And what I'm hearing you say too, and this is really important, I think this is really important for people to know, is that you didn't take your 6-year-old and throw him in a massive, massive tractor without any experience.
right,
They
yeah,
started on their little bike and then they
yeah,
moved to their little quad and their little, Jeep or whatever, and then
hmm
they moved to the bigger quad and then they moved to the skid steer and then they move to the tractor. You're
yeah,
not just throwing them in the big tractor and saying, "Okay, boy, do this,"
right,
right? You're taking the steps and you're with them. And I think that's what people don't understand when they see this, shocking video of a 6-year-old driving like the big four-wheel drive whatever. He didn't
right,
start he started on the little quad in the backyard. He learned how to maneuver it. He learned how to, oh, if I turn it like this, it's going to do this. He
yeah.
learned there. And it's just about learning. Absolutely.
And, they've literally, since especially our youngest came home from the hospital, the night we brought him home from the hospital, we were like on the side by side checking cattle. Like these boys have grown up sitting on our laps in these pieces of equipment. Like, so to your point, they've absolutely did not just get thrown into it and said, good luck, boys, but they've learned from us on smaller equipment and watching us do it too. So,
For sure. Although having said that, I did teach my children to swim like this. I held them in the pool and I let go and I said, figure it out. You're going
you
on.
got
Wait,
this.
lift you up,
Yeah.
figure it out. Like
That's
kick
the
your
whole
legs,
thing
do
now,
your
though.
thing.
You were ahead of a trend.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My girls don't know how to drive the big tractors, but yeah, we don't have a big tractor. We had smaller tractors, but yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about the business side of your farm. So if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
So you're working off-farm jobs to support your farming habit. How does that work? Like, can you tell me a little bit about the business side of how you make your farm work?
Yeah. So, like I said, we run a cow calf operation. So, we have 200 head of mama cows right now. So, we have about 100 calves, ideally, in the spring and 100 calves in the fall. And we sell a spring crop and we sell a fall crop. We typically, the last several years, we have several, other farmers and ranchers that we typically always sell to. Sometimes we'll go to like our local sale barn, but, you know, really we've been pretty lucky the last several years of having these steady flow of customers that are kind of repeat customers. But definitely, one of our things that we've really kind of dug into and looked into the last few years is like social media and being able to sell and market on social media, and what a pull and a change that is for our marketing strategies and where we want to take our operations in the future, right? So I definitely think it's a great that's a great free resource for anyone in the agriculture business is set up a social media platform and, you know, do your marketing there, build your customer base there. And it's a whole free world of marketing for you. So
Absolutely. That's, hindsight 2020. I wish when I had my farm that I did more with that resource.
Mhm.
And going forward, as I'm coaching my clients and teaching my clients, how to do farm to table sales, it's the first thing. Social media is number one. And you're right, it's free and it builds the like, know, and trust factor. We've got a
Mhm.
little bit of mistrust in our food system right now. And so when you can build trust between yourself and that customer and that client, you're building relationship, and relationship is where it's at for sales and marketing, and that's
Sure.
number one. When you can shake the hand of the person that feeds you, and so when you can build that trust of our food system and build the trust of the farmers, even if you are on the bigger scale, you're not necessarily direct marketing anything. Farmers, I think, are changing the food system in that they're just telling their stories. And I feel like farmers have been demonized for a very long time. People from the city are saying farmers need to do this and farmers need to do that and farmers need to do this. And as farmers are telling their stories saying, this is what we do and this is what we do and this is what we do and this is why we do it, I think that's so important in society to learn, just to learn how our food is raised and what we do on farms and why we do it. Hey friends, on Dawn's Dirt, we get real about growing food, farming, homesteading, living free, and digging into the stuff that actually matters. If you're loving the dirt we're dishing out, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on your favorite social media platforms. That's how we keep growing this community of badass, soil covered, chicken loving, freedom chasing humans. Like and subscribe to me on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. Come be part of the movement.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a really cool part of social media too. And I think the homesteading thing has boomed so much. I'm sure you've seen it too. I think people are intrigued with it and they do see a beautiful way of life. And not that it's I know I'm kind of giving it a hard time a minute ago. Like it is very glossed over on social media but it is a beautiful way of life. It's hard, but it's a beautiful way of life. And I hope more people want to join in and they want to question our food sources and they want to be a part of making our food choices better and growing it. I love this. And I don't know if you guys are seeing this up here, and we've really been seeing it in Missouri and Arkansas the last few years, but farmers markets are booming here. And like I can't remember in my lifetime them being as popular and as prevalent as I feel like they are now. And like, how cool is that? I know that's kind of your life and where you've worked and lived. And I just admire that a lot. And I think let's get back to that. And it makes me really proud that, I am seeing it more locally and it seems like people are appreciating it and feels like people are gardening more than I've ever seen, especially since COVID. So I think that was a good thing that came out of COVID. People were bored and they started gardening, and then they're like, "This is kind of cool," and we grew our own tomato. So I love that shift that we have seen. So
For sure, absolutely we have. So that's how my business got started, actually. I sold the farm and I've got all this experience growing vegetables, and I've had like many, many clients that I've taught how to grow gardens in their backyard because that's where it
oh
starts. And so
yeah,
there's a quote, not everyone's a farmer, but everyone should be a producer. And I think if everyone would grow something in the space they have. So even if you're an apartment building, grow a tomato plant and work with your neighbors. And I just think if everyone had a few vegetables and a few chickens in their backyard, you can get your beef from the farmer down the road. That is where food is at. And that's, I feel like, where we need to get back to,
yeah,
the home cooking and things like that. Yeah, it could change the face of how we do our food globally. Instead of going to the
mhm,
grocery store and picking up that, box of Kraft dinner, you're just buying from your neighbor and producing it yourself and cooking. And then you can also take that one step further with the community. I'm
yeah.
sure that your mother or your mother-in-law has cooked a meal for your family once in a while so that you come home from a hard day's work and you eat as a family, even extended family, and you're eating good, wholesome food that way. Or does that happen, or am I wrong?
No, I mean, my mom is the best at that. I count myself so lucky. I grew up, my mom made Thanksgiving meal basically every single night. Every single night we had a home cooked full dinner with dessert, all of it. And, my mom is, I say she's like the original homesteader. I mean, she's been homesteading before homesteading was cool. I mean, my mom has an incredible garden, chickens, all of it, you know. She is widowed for about the last 10 years and she just does it all. And it's so cool to me. And very much what you're saying, you know, there's a lot of times or I'm sick or the boys are sick or something. And, you know, she might not even tell me, or she'll just drop off a casserole or drop off dinner or soup or something like that to help out, you know. Or, you know, I had to have surgery last year and she brought dinner down every night for like 2 weeks, you know, and that stuff is so special. And I didn't have to worry that my kids were gonna live on, you know, McDonald's for 2 weeks. So, you know,
And that's amazing. And that's what the farming community is. And that's actually what a church
Mhm.
community is as well.
For
It's
sure.
people working with people, you know, where you're looking after one another and you're finding the needs of, you know, whoever's in your small community, in your small area, and you're picking up the pieces and you're working together as a unit
Mhm.
and helping one another out. And I feel like that's something that we've lost in society. And as I talk to more and more people are looking for community. So you can find that in churches and you can find that in, you know, your food system, in your farmer's market. The hardest part about for me selling my farm was my customers, you know, I missed them. That was
Yeah.
honestly the hardest part was, and I cried, I wept. They wept when I told them that I had to sell the farm, you know?
Mm.
And so it's that community piece and finding that. And we need to bring that back. And I think the homesteading movement is bringing that back. It's bringing back the
Sure.
home cooked meals and really realizing that you can do it. Like we said earlier in the show, you can do it, but you might not be able to do it all. But if you find the community and if you're able to do parts and pieces of it as you're able to. And so, and
Mhm.
it takes work. It takes hard work. It takes the shift from, you know, not watching TV all evening to doing what you need to do.
Well, there you just said it. That's how we do it all. I mean, you don't watch TV every night, and I think that's become our society, you know. And people don't want to get outside or you know, you can do it all because we can, right? It's just making those sacrifices of some of these other pleasurable things that we also enjoy, right? And it's all in moderation, but we don't watch a lot of TV because we don't have time. And that's just one of those things that's not a priority for us. So but yeah, kudos to you for saying that. So
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's Dawn's dirt. I kind of call it as I see it, whether it's controversial or not. I just say it. You know, we've talked about politics and religion on my show, and I don't shy away from those two subjects at all. My three favorite subjects to talk about are farming, politics, and religion. Like those are
love it.
like that's where it's at. You know, just dealing with society, and not in a mean way. I don't like the division and the hatred and the I'm right and you're wrong. It's just, you know,
Right.
speaking when we can meet people and build bridges and have conversations and just meet people, you know, different than us, I think that's how we're gonna change the world, one person at a time. So
For sure.
for
I love
sure.
that.
Yeah. So okay. So as we wrap up here, any more thoughts on farming, agriculture, and what would you say to a young person wanting to get into it?
Just do it. Just go for it. Buy something and go for it. You know, make that investment so you're committed and have faith and enjoy it. I mean, enjoy it and know that there's people out here cheering for you and don't be hesitant to ask advice. You know, I do hate that when we see young people that don't want to ask advice or take advice or get help. Ask for help. Us older ones, we want to help and we want to be, you know, mentors and guide you and give you our advice so we feel a little bit, you know, worthwhile sometimes. So,
For sure, absolutely. I had people who mentored me on my farm, and
mhm,
then I've mentored others, and now I've created a whole business around mentoring people on how to do farm to
awesome.
table sales and growing gardens and things like that. So, absolutely, it's okay to ask for help and build that community that way as well. There's people with experience, right? So,
Yeah.
thanks so much for your time today. Where
Thank
can people
you.
find you? Yeah,
So
where can
we're on
people
social
find you?
media. We're on Instagram and TikTok and all of them, so much. It's faithful_farming on all of them. Our 6 year old who loves to drive equipment, he actually films a lot of our content. He's been a huge part of why we have social media. He's got his Meta glasses, so you can see some cool POV reels and stuff from him. He's pretty good at it. So he's our little entrepreneur, and we're super proud of him. And so we've had a lot of fun. We've had a lot of fun building our social media platform, and come join us. So
I love it. I love it. So yeah, if you're listening, go follow that link, and yeah, it'll be all in all my other things too. So yeah, appreciate your time today, and thanks for being on the show, and we'll look forward to
yeah.
seeing you in the future. So
All right. See you, Dawn.